connected to this session. That's very good. So I welcome you all to this information session that DigiMove and CINEA are organizing together on technical assistance under the new CEF. So not all the technical assistance, but we are focusing this morning on the technical assistance to member states and to the rail freight corridors. We thought it's quite important to have this information session as there are many changes to the approach we have defined for the technical assistance. Of course, this time the grant agreements for technical assistance and the management of the call and of the grant agreements is delegated to CINEA, so that's the first important change compared to the previous situation, and we are very happy that CINEA has accepted to care also of these grant agreements for the technical assistance. So this will also allow to streamline the approach and to make use of the documents, the new IT environment that we have put in place at the corporate level in the Commission to manage grant agreements. So that's the first important change. The second change is very much about simplification, as our approach is this time when it comes to the technical assistance for member states. The approach is one grant agreement only. In the past, we had various items, various activities covered by different grant agreements, leading with a high number of reporting streams and financial transactions. So we thought that it is important to simplify all this and then to have the principle of one grant agreement per member state only, which will in one reporting stream only and only one set of financial transactions. Last but not least, a major change is also the introduction of the use of lump sums. So this is a major simplification. So which basically means that we will get rid of the control of the costs and of the cost documents and the usual sampling and cost and for you also all the documentation that needs to be sent and so on. And we will have this time a simple output-based approach, so that on one side you have the lump sum, on the other side you have a list of deliverables, and this is if the deliverables corresponding to the various work packages are done, then you are entitled to the full amount of the lump sum. This will of course be explained in much more details in a few minutes. Just perhaps also one message up front, because we have received quite a lot of questions. So of course we had to justify how we calculate the amount of the lump sum. So that's why you have in the decision that is entirely authorizing the use of the lump sum, you have quite a lot of details per activities, per years, but please differentiate the calculation of the lump sum ex ante, so the justification of the amount, which is one thing, and then the use of the lump sum. Of course, you do not need to go in this level of details, and then the keyword is maximum flexibility. You are not bound by the element per year or per activity that you can find in the lump sum decision, because what matters, as I said, is that at the end of the period set in the grant agreement, you have done the output, and that's the only we are requiring. So that's an important clarification up front. Today we have two parts in our agenda. So first, our colleague Julie will recall what are the various elements, the components you can pick from, and we will then have a Q&A session. And then in the second part, our colleagues CINEA will take us more into details in the application process and the new IT tool, because there are also quite some questions. And as it is a new tool, we want you to have all the security that you have all the elements to introduce your applications. And of course, we will help as much as possible so that our simplification purpose is also materializing. So with that, I would like perhaps now to pass on to ask my colleague Morten Jensen from CINEA to continue with introduction before then having the first presentation. So Morten, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Olivier, and good morning to everyone. I hope you can hear me. I had a bit of a sound and connection issue before starting, so I hope you hear me clearly. Good. Thank you. And therefore, I may also risk to repeat a bit what you already said, Olivier. Sorry about that, because I didn't get everything from the beginning. But indeed, I would also very much like to welcome you from the side of CINEA to this information session in relation to the technical assistance calls that were published on the 16th of December. As you have seen from the invitation, then we are also using the new corporate IT system for the technical assistance grant, like we are doing it for the normal calls, so to say. This also means it is a new tool. I think the member states and also the infrastructure managers are already familiar with it to a certain extent, because they are preparing proposals for the CEF transport calls, whereas it is likely to be new to the rail freight corridors. So in the long term, this means that or from now on, it means that we are managing all the CEF transport projects within the same IT system. And this is a simplification for all of us, and together with the lump sum decision, which was also mentioned by Olivier and which Julie will get further into, there are a number of simplifications that will benefit us in the future. But of course, with a new system, we all need to get used to working with it, and this creates some questions, and there are also some teething problems, of course, with at the beginning of using a new system. So we will try to anticipate the questions through the presentations that will be given this morning, and I hope that this will very much clarify the situation for all of you. I would like to mention one thing up front, which is the fact that the calls, they are referring to a minimum amount of 500,000 euro for applications. We are going to update the call text and remove this minimum amount. This is only concerning very few potential proposals. As far as I know, it's only concerning 2 rail freight corridor proposals, but nevertheless, it is of course important to have clarity on this issue, so therefore this will be removed in the coming days from the call text on the website. In practical terms, we have the presentations as you have seen from the agenda, and we have the question and answer sessions. Please use the chat for asking questions after the presentations, and we will try to reply to ideally all of the questions. But should there be any questions we are not able to reply to immediately or within the time, then we will come back to you in writing on this with further information. So I think with this, I will stop here, and I will pass the floor to the first presentation by DG Move by Julie Bui. The floor is yours, Julie.
Thank you very much, Morten. So I will present my screen. I will put it in presentation mode. Can you see my screen properly? Is it good?
If you can increase the size, Julie, or the because we see the small size slide.
Okay.
If you can click on presentation mode, then it should be fine.
I think now it should be okay, but it will maybe take 1 minute to be on big screen. Is it okay now?
Not yet. It looks like it's preparing to come, but it's not yet clear. Try to click on slideshow again.
I am on slide.
Okay.
We'll do it again. Okay, I think I will start, but you can see the slides or not? Yes?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. I will present you the call text which has been published in December. So before to start, I would like to remind what is the definition of the technical assistance. So in the financial regulation, we define technical assistance as support and capacity building activities necessary for the implementation of a program or an action, in particular preparatory management, monitoring, evaluation, audit, and control activities. So on 16 December 21, we published two calls, one under the general envelope and one under the cohesion envelope. Under the general envelope, there are three topics, one for the member states, one for the Rail Freight Corridor, one for ReNet Europe. For the member states, there are three work packages which are identified in the lump sum decisions, the work package 3, 4, and 5 of the lump sum decision. So for the participation of the member states in the core network corridor, the participation, I understand that we don't listen. Can you hear me? Because I saw a comment that you could not hear me.
We hear you well, Julie. Please go ahead.
Okay. So the work package, I was explaining that for the member state under the cohesion envelope, there are the general envelope. There are three work packages which have been identified, defined in the lump sum decision. So the participation of the member state to the core network corridor, the participation of the member state in the executive board of the rail freight corridor, and the work of the member state for the automated transfer of data for the TEN-TEC. Then there is another topic, which is for the rail freight corridor. So here it's for the infrastructure managers participating in the rail freight corridor management boards. And then there is the third topic of this call, which is for RailNet Europe. So here we are not working with lump sum, but we are working with the classical co-funding rates based on incur cost. Then for the cohesion envelope, this call is addressed only to the member states. And here we have the 5 work package for the member states, which are identified in this lump sum decision. So the 3 I just mentioned before, so the number 3, 4, and 5, which are also in the general envelope, and 2 additional work package, the first and the second, which are defined in this lump sum decision, which concern first the communication activity, appraisal activity, and technical monitoring under the CEF 2021-27. And then the work package 2, which is about the technical monitoring of the ongoing projects of the CEF 14-20. So for the legacy of the CEF, the previous CEF. We draw the attention to the fact that for technical assistance, there is no need to have member state validation for the application. Very important to clarify this point. Then on the next slide, it's low. So who can apply? We also received several questions on this. So for the member states, the targeted beneficiary is the member state. So, however, for some work package, you may need to also have affiliated entities. For instance, this was asked for the work package 5, which concern the TEN-TEC. So the data managers or data owners, like infrastructure manager, can be affiliated entities in your application, as long as there is a legal or capital link between the beneficiary and the data manager. For the rail freight corridor, only the rail freight corridor infrastructure managers and understanding also allocation bodies can apply. But it can also be a dedicated rail freight corridor infrastructure managers legal entity, such as the EIG, sorry. So the EIG can be a sole applicant if it is exclusively composed of the IM working on the respective rail freight corridor, and if it is not undertaking any other activity, but implementing, managing the rail freight corridor within the scope of the technical assistance rail freight corridor call for proposal. And then for RailNet Europe, the targeted beneficiary is RailNet Europe. So the lump sums, coming to the lump sums, so as I mentioned, most of the work packages are defined by lump sums. So we remind and we recall that the lump sums is a simplified form of funding. So the purpose is really only to simplify. So as Olivier mentioned in the introduction, the workload has been estimated and defined in the upstream decision of the Commission, the lump sum decision. So all the chapter 3 of this lump sum decision describe the methodology, how we have calculated the amount for the corresponding lump sum. But we will not check the actual cost, incur cost. We will just organize a payment based on the output which has been delivered. So this is a simplification at the beneficiary level, both in terms of application and reporting requirements. So that means also that for the application, we expect you to simply copy-paste in the application form B, part B of the application, and to extract from each work package, which are defined in the lump sum decision in the section 2.1, the output and the deliverable. So basically, I will show now in the next slide. very concretely. On the left side, you have the Part B, extract of Part B application form. On the right side, you have the lump sum decision. So for the application form, we would expect you to include in the tasks each output. So for instance, for the work package 1, you would put the first output, the communication, so including web page with information on the CEF, opportunities, conference organization. Then the second task would be the appraisal of the CEF 21-27 project proposals. And for the third task would be the technical monitoring. That would be the task which correspond to the output that we expect you to provide. Then for the deliverables, so on the left side is the extract of the Part B. On the right side is the lump sum decision. So we would expect you to put in the deliverable what is written in the lump sum decision in the section 2.1 has the document which are allowing us to assess the technical completion of the output. So here I took, for instance, the work package 5. So the deliverable 1 would be the first report summarizing the findings of the analysis, including a project implementation plan up to 2024. The deliverable number 2 would be a well-performing and implemented automated data exchange solution in production with Tentech across all relevant transport modes. And the third deliverable would be the final report summarizing the entire project life cycle, including the documentations, lessons learned, and recommendations. So we also draw the attention to the fact that an output which is not delivered is no payment. So on this table, I just copy-paste what is written also in the lump sum decision. So I remind what are the outputs for each work package and the supporting assessment document supporting the assessment. So for instance, for the work package 1, it's about communication, project proposal appraisal, and technical monitoring. We would expect, and for the work package 2, sorry, it's technical and financial monitoring of the ongoing action of the CEF for 2014-2020. And for these two work package, we wanted really to simplify, so even merge together the document that has to be provided as the demonstration of that the output has been carried out. So we ask a BNL report, so a report every 2 years, on for those activities. And so that would be a report which specify communication activities, the permanent information to CINEA on the communication action, the number of applications received, rejected, approved under the national appraisal, and information on the technical monitoring of the CEF Action 21-27 and on the CEF Action of the Legacy Program 2014-2020. For the work package 3, so the output is a participation in at least 80% of the meeting of the relevant core network corridor fora, and the response to the coordinator corridor work plans over the duration of the grant agreement. So here we would expect as document supporting the assessment of the technical completion of the output, the list of participants of the core network corridor forum meeting, and evidence related to the official communication concerning the communication regarding the core network corridor work plan. For the work package 4, so the participation of the member states in the railway corridor. So here there are 4 sub-activities regrouped into two groups, let's say. So for the activity A and B, it's about the participation of the member states in at least 80% of the meeting. And for the work package C and D, is the submission of the reports, which is referred in the Article 22 of the Railway Corridor Regulation. So the document supporting the assessment of the technical output will be a BNL report, so every 2 years, with the list of the meeting organized and the list of participants. And for the activity C and D, a BNL report. So in fact, the report of the Article 22, which has to be published every 2 years. For the work package 5, so on the Tentech, so it is composed of 3 phases. each phase needs to be fulfilled prior to pursuing with the next one. So if the deliverables of a given phase are negatively evaluated by the granting authority, the lump sum corresponding to that phase will not be paid, nor those of the next phases. So here you have the three documents which are supposed to support the assessment of this technical completion of the output. So we would expect a first report for the first phase summarizing the findings of the analysis, including a project implementation plan up to 2024. Then a well-performing and implemented automated data exchange solution in production with 10 tech across all relevant transport modes. And the third would be the final report summarizing the entire project lifecycle. Finally, the work package 6 regarding the rail freight corridor management boards and also for the rail freight corridors infrastructure managers. So the deliverables to be produced are described in the article 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, and 19 of the regulation. So I did not copy paste the list of deliverables which is in the lump sum decision. I just draw the attention that when you receive the invitation letter, one annex was also provided. This annex is an indicative basis to elaborate a final set of criteria during the preparation of the grant agreements. So this has still to be discussed, I think, with the unit C3. But what we want to make sure is that the criteria will be the same for all corridors. So we will start the question and answer, but before to go into this session, I would like also to clarify another point, because we also received before this meeting several questions. So we want to clarify how the budget of the technical assistance is calculated for the lump sums. So the amount of the technical assistance is defined per year. So we have a lump sum, yearly lump sum. And the total budget depends on the grant agreement duration. So if it's 3 years, it will be 3 times the annual lump sum. As you know, we want to avoid any overlap with the previous program support action. So we know that for some member states or some rail freight corridor, you have PSAs which are continuing until the end of 2021. So we have agreed that the budget for 21 can be reduced proportionally to the duration of the self-supported action in 2021. So to be clear, for instance, if a program support action ended in September 2021, we can calculate it 3 months for the year 2021. So for instance, if this year was an amount of 120,000 euros, then 3 months would be 36,000 euros. And then if the duration of the grant is 3 years and 3 months, then it would be a total of 396,000 euros. Again, we clarify that the methodology described in section 3 of the lump sum decision has been used to determine the amount of the lump sum per year. The allocation of the grant in the form of lump sum among individual beneficiaries of a consumption and their respective activities can be freely determined by the applicant. So the final payment will be based on assessing the technical completeness of the output delivered against the stipulation in the respective grant agreement upon finalization of the grant agreement. So I think this was the end of my presentation. This slide is not, so we can start the question and answer. I will just remove the share of the screen to see what are the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. So as you have understood, so you need to choose just 2 things. You need to choose what work packages and tasks you would like to do, and you need to choose the time period. And once you have done that, you just copy paste into your application, and this will determine the grant amount. So that's a bit the general idea. So we have received a few questions in the chat. So I repeat, yes, the presentation will be shared, of course. And so then on the activities, so first there is a question on the new 10T, as I understand the proposal for the future 10T. So it's a regulation, there is no transposition. So at this stage, this is not covered in the sense that we expect the new 10T to be approved only in 23, and then we will see if there is a need to complement the technical assistance by then, but it would rather be for the second period of the program.
If I may, Philip here, I think the question relates to the streamlining directive, which is Directive 2021-1187 indeed. So the one on permitting. But I don't think this is covered in any of the work packages. So I think we are not covering this here.
Yes. Thank you, Philip. That's correct, indeed. So no, the streamlining directive is not covered. Right. Let me quickly scroll down. So on certain activities for the corridor fora that have taken place, and I see the question that perhaps that list of participants have not been established. I think that's not perhaps a problem to establish a document ex post that indicates who was there. I think we will trust. I think the member states representatives on this, but we need to have, of course, some trace or some declarations concerning these meetings that have already taken place, and then please, for the next meeting, this has to be done properly. Then we have a few questions also on the 10-tech part, notably the question concerning the different modes, and what about if the exchanges happen only in certain modes. Philippe or Mohammadi, would you like to take this question?
Yes, hello, Mohammadi here. I hope you hear me.
Yes,
of course, yeah, we are aiming for data exchange for all transport modes and not only for one transport mode. And if this is already visible in your first report, where you have to outline the entire project, and that the outcome is indeed that you might be only able to connect railways data or waterways data, road data. And of course, we need to see how to proceed. But if the initial report says, yes, it's possible for all relevant transport modes, but if you fail in the second phase or in the third phase, then of course the rules which have been presented by Julie at the beginning will apply. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so this links also perhaps to another question on what if a deliverable is, or let's say that, yes, the deliverables are only partially there at the end of a specific year. Do we get the lump sum proportionally reduced? So here the answer is no. So either you get the lump sum for the specific year or you don't. But we cannot apportionate the lump sum to what is being done, because definition of the lump sum is that we are not looking into the costs. So either the judgment of what has been done is positive and you get it to the full extent, or if things have not been done, then you do not get the lump sum for a specific year, for instance. Then on the timing of the signature of the grant agreement, I think I would leave this perhaps to our colleagues from CINEA who are in charge of this process. Then there are a few questions on the documents themselves, but I understand they will also be covered in the coming presentation. So, are there specific form for the reports? I don't think we would prescribe a specific form for the activity reports. We are not looking for something that is extremely long, and it's again, the idea is to have simplification there, but of course it should, let's say, give us sufficient assurance that what has been described in the work package has been realized. But then also my colleagues might wish to come back on the format of this reporting. I see that in the meantime, Eleni has also indicated that the grant agreements have to be signed by July this year. So perhaps Julie, would you like to reply to the question which relates to the relationship between work packages and tasks? We have this question: would you please clarify if it is possible to select just 2 out of 3 tasks in the provided work package?
For because in the application form there is the notion of work package, and each work package should include a number of tasks. What we propose is that if, for instance, the railway corridor, they have only one work package because it's a work package which is defined in the lump sum decision, they would include one work package which corresponds to the work package number 6 of the lump sum decision. And in the description of this work package, there are tasks to be specified, and the task would be the definition of the output related to this work package 6 of the lump sum decision. So if I take now the example of the member states of the cohesion member state, then they would have 5 work packages, which correspond to the 5 work packages which are described in the lump sum decision. And for each work package, they would include 5 work packages in the application, and under each work package, there is a task relating to this work package to be defined, and then for the task, they could just put the description of the output, which is described also in the section 2.1 of the lump sum decision. I see also that there is a question regarding if a public body responsible for the evaluation of CEF application under national law apply to the member state part of the call. So if you consider that other entities needs to be involved, they can be designated as affiliated entities in your application, provided that there is a legal or capital link between the EU member states and the other entity. Then there is also there were a question from the ScanMet railway corridor regarding the legal entity, which is not an EIG but an association. So on this one, I will let Daniel reply afterwards, and then I continue to check a bit the chat.
Yeah, perhaps really just also to address 2 questions on the timesheets. So will it be necessary to keep timesheets? So no. I mean, of course, you might wish to keep timesheets for your own accountancy. But for our purpose, we will not require timesheets because we are not checking the incurred costs. And the second, so is it necessary to spend the amount per year as defined in the lump sum decision? So the answer is no. The estimation per year is there to assess the upfront, the amount of the lump sum, but then reality might be that you might need a little bit more in a certain year and is a little bit less in another year. So in any case, as we are not requesting you to document your costs and when the costs are being incurred, you can distribute freely the lump sum within the duration of the grant agreement. Of course, again, what matters is that the output is there at the end, so that you, for instance, you cannot just not attend the corridor fora for 1 year and start again the following year. I mean, that's, of course, for all the tasks that, let's say, imply a certain continuity, you will need to explain that there was indeed in your report that there was continuity, for instance, in the participation and attendance, but we are not requesting that you document that the costs were evenly distributed per year.
So, Olivier, to clarify, because I saw that there were a question like, for instance, if the work package can be cut. So that depends. But what has to be, like, the output has to be delivered. So if I take the example of the rail freight corridor, the output is the implementation of the article 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So if in the end the output show that all those articles has been implemented, it will be paid. But if they are not implemented, so one of the 5 articles has not been implemented, the output will not be paid. Now it's the deliverables it's over 2 years because there is a biennial report, I think. In the case of there is a biennial report, then in that case, the output would be monitored every 2 years. So if the second phase is not implemented, then it would be half of the lump sum that would be paid. Like for the work package 5, there are 3 phases, and the output is paid by phase. If one phase is delivered, then we pay the first phase. Correct?
Okay, now I think that there are also some questions on the financial documentation, but there I would suggest that perhaps as we are now at the time when the second presentation should start, I would suggest that perhaps we take these questions at the end of your presentation, and notably what happens in terms of audits, what is the documentation that will be required. I think that's an important question. So on invoices and so on. So perhaps we now move on with the presentation on how to introduce the application, and then we come back on the financial questions, if it is okay. So then, Daniel, please, the floor is yours.
Hello, I don't think you can hear me yet.
We can hear you now, Daniel.
Okay, because with sharing the presentation, I've lost my WebEx screen, so I understand you can hear me, and unless you cry fault, I would also understand you can see the presentation. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the session. I will take a couple of questions from the session at the end of my presentation as suggested by Olivier, and my presentation will be twofold. Basically, I will first run you very quickly through basic elements of the funding and tenders portal, just to refresh the mind of those who have already worked with and to give a basic introduction to those who are new to it. And then I will try to make a live demo on the funding and tenders portal to show you certain elements we deem to be very relevant for submitting or rather encoding and then submitting your proposal. So as basic elements for the funding and tenders portal, you have a public access and you have a registered access, which is accessed by the EU login account. If you don't have any such yet, you will, once you have logged in, you will find personalized information for any ongoing proposals, projects, which you have created under your EU account. This is one of the basic things that you will have to create such account based on the EU login. The initial presentation would have explained how to create such an EU login. I skipped that, and I only want to remind you that this is the basic principle to get started. The funding and tenders portal then, based on your login account, allows you to go further, and for your organization you will need what is called the PIC number, the unique identifier for each organization. Mostly, if you're coming from a ministry, I would assume your ministry has already participated in funded action by another EU instrument. Hence, I would expect such a PIC number to exist, and you can search for it in the tool. If you have to create one because your organization, like an EEIG set up for a welfare corridor, participates for the first time, you will get a preliminary PIC directly, and all validation issues you don't have to worry about. They happen later in the process, at a later step of the evaluation procedure, and with these temporary PIC directly created, you can continue to prepare and submit your application. And then for the individual user, you can have a multitude of roles, which I'm not going to go into any detail here because it would lead too far for the purpose of the presentation. I'm just going to make you aware that they exist and that they have different names and codes and everything. So this is the next thing for registering your organization, which will trigger the PIC. This is the second step, basically required other than having an EU login. And then in the participants registry, you can see either you have to search for your PIC if you're not aware of it, if you have to look up in the database of all organizations registered with the participants portal, or you create a new one if you are sure and certain that your organization has never ever participated in a proposal that was submitted under this IT platform. Yes, just some summarizing remarks on this. The EU logging is a predominant thing, and the data you have then submitted will later be validated by central validation services. These are not within CINEA, but these are in another executive agency who centrally manages all, let's say, administrative aspects relating to submissions via the funding and tenders portal. And the colleagues in this agency would, at a later stage of evaluation, then automatically contact an organization for any validation processes, which, by the way, is also the same for financial capacity. I can maybe make a little excursion here, as we have received related questions. Demonstrating a financial capacity would only happen later in the evaluation process and is not required prior to submitting your proposal, and you don't have to provide any information related to your financial capacity at this stage. You only have to encode the legal status of your organization, and the rest would follow then. Yes, and here in the second last bullet, what I've said already, the validation of the organization and other things are only triggered for successful proposals, which is evidently only known late in the evaluation process. Any exchange, of course, with the central services happens via the participants registry and automated notifications in the tool. Then more for information at this stage, the identity management and all the many roles you can have. So with your EU login, you have initially one identity, and then you can attribute other colleagues' roles and access management depending on the roles in the proposals. Again, I'm not going to dwell here into much detail because there is a wealth of guidance and support from the central service. So it's just to say here, to give you an overview, there is a number of different roles for the organization and then for the project specifics that you're preparing and encoding. In the next slide, I have the decoding of all these many abbreviations, which will be confusing and which is, again, not necessary to know at this point. What is important here is simply to say each organization will have to have what is called here this legal entity appointed representative, because that is the person then who acts officially in the system to validate and sign things. And for the rest, it is only for information that later in the process, depending also on how many beneficiaries or how many applicants there are, there is a variety of roles which can be assigned, which have different access rights, which comes here. So to each role are then different access rights accordingly attributed. And all of this can be set by the applicants now, or in case of successful proposals, which in the course we are discussing today, in principle, I assume to be given, is also for the reporting later, which will also happen in the eGrants platform. Then you have all these different roles and rights. And all of this, which is important to be retained, is based on the email address associated to the EU login account. So all the colleagues which you may wish to attribute to one or the other role in the proposal, you always have to attribute them with the email address related to the EU login account, because otherwise you would have a mismatch that if they want to log in, the system would not recognize them, because the logging is always based on the EU account. And if you encode them with a different email than with your login account, that would create to an automatic clerical editorial technical mismatch, and the whole system would not function. So this is the most important thing to keep in mind, that everything is based on the email addresses related to the EU login account of the respective colleagues. And then again, this is more for information. After login, you will have, under the tab My Organization, possibilities to manage the registration, update organization's details, modify, nominate, revoke roles of the organization, and also manage the profile of your organization in the portal. Same under the tab My Projects, you will have access to the list of projects you're involved in, depending on the different statuses they have, if you're in grant agreement preparation, if you have to do reporting issues. So this is then the different strings of information the portal gives you access to. Important for those, we had it in principle already under CEF 1 and 10 tech. Everything here is fully paperless, meaning proposals are encoded in the funding attenders portal tool. You have to download certain documents and complete them and re-upload them, but you will also validate your submission only by, in principle, clicking a button in the tool. And all the information you submit will then automatically be stored in PDF format in a central database, meaning that the data encoded in the online web-based interface plus all annexes you uploaded will be kind of dumped into one file, into one PDF file for legal reference in the system. And all that is based on the nominated leader who is authorized to sign an application and the underlying validation procedures. And here it's just for the assurance, the validity of the electronic receipt with timestamped EU login credentials of the submitter, etc. This in principle is to say it's an established system, and the portal we have now onboarded to is used by a great number of other EU funding instruments, and that is a routine procedure through which thousands of applications are passing depending on the nature of the call, so that is safe and fully valid. Yes, and again, you will have notifications after you logged in. You will have email notifications if you change of roles, if any documents become available, etc. And the formal notifications come equally in, where you may require acknowledgement of receipt to be returned, but this is normally only at a later stage and not for the submission procedures. Again, I have in the beginning shown the screenshot of the funding and tenders portal, where in the upper right you then have my account, and that my account here is just breaking down to which it gives access to, again, the roles you have, security settings, your own information about your account, and the logout possibility, which is in the upper right of the funding and tenders portal screen once you're in. Here you have it again as a reminder on the upper right. This is the colleague from RTD who initially gave this presentation. And there you have then the account information. That is in principle the first part of my presentation. To say this presentation is a very much condensed version of the presentation that was given by an RTD colleague from the central services at the general information day for the general course in September. These colleagues have the help desk here, where you can ask specific questions related to the technical functioning of the portal. There is a wealth of online support, also with video tutorials, how to navigate and to work in the system. If you would want to see this presentation in way more detail, I have given you here the direct link to the recording of the Central Info Day, where you can have in principle the same presentation 3 times as long with 3 times as more depth and detail than I have given you here, only to give you the basics of these elements. And with this, I would leave the presentation. One second, and I swap now to try and be so bold to make a live demo on the funding and tenders portal to show you there some key elements which we would deem useful for you to know when preparing your application. You should have now the funding and portal landing page, where I already had searched for the 3 topics of the funding and tenders, of the technical assistance call, which you will find here. Voila. So here you have these 3 calls, the 3 topics of the call, which you can see, and from there you would enter into the more detailed settings, which you probably have already been working.
The screen disappeared, Daniel.
Yes, that is also what I assumed I did. I'm just seeing if I share again, if I will keep the functionalities I wanted to show, because I could not get it again. So you should have now, and I've cheekily jumped from the landing page into a proposal I have created previously in order to be able to show a little bit the behavior of the system and what are the important elements. If you wish, I can still take you through the first steps of creating a proposal, which I have done here now to save you the, how to say, sharing with me, where I type in test and test to click through the first element. So you've seen up here, I've done a logging, I have done a topic selection, I have created a proposal and I created a first, fictitious participant. And I have done this under here, the topic for Waynet Europe, which is the actual cost topic. And I have equally done it for the topic of welfare corridors, which is still labeled wrongly as unit because it's lump sum approach. This update seemingly hasn't worked. You have two important elements. You have firstly added forms, which brings you into the application form part A in our jargon, which is the interface of the structured data where you encode the basic data of your application going directly into the database of the portal. Here you've got the references under which call, under which topic you are. You see the very meaningful proposal acronym I have chosen. And here you have then the 4 general sections: general information, participants, budget, and other questions. General information I jump because that is reasonably straightforward to encode and to tick a number of text boxes where you agree with data confidentiality provisions and the like. Participants is to encode the participants. I wanted to show particularly the budget because under the lump sum costs, the budget element is reasonably straightforward because there is a single number to be encoded. This is due to the simplification that Olivier has mentioned, that under lump sums, we will have one single amount. Now the loading takes, of course, in the demonstration disproportionately long, but here we go. So I've taken also a fictitious amount. This is the fictitious applicant with a fictitious amount, and they are from Belgium. And you only here, this is an editable, and you can increase the amount, not more than this, it seems. Okay. Interesting that the encoding, well, for the TA grants, I think the maximum funding that can be encoded here should be largely sufficient. And it is a single amount to be encoded both for the member state applications under the member state TA grants as well as for the welfare corridor grants. Why this is so, I explain with the funding calculator. If I go to the equivalent form for the Waynet Europe, and I hope we have the Waynet Europe colleagues in the meeting, they are an actual cost grant where you will find in principle the classical budget table as it applies under the standard infrastructure or studies grants from the classical calls, which then is the budget table with the multitude of different cost categories, etc., which we have, how to say, taken out in the simplification operation to use lump sums for the vast majority of the TA grants. And this will come up in a moment. So here, to give the colleagues from the member states and the welfare coders a comparison, this is what you no longer have to do, which only the colleagues from Waynet Europe will have to encode, which is the budget table with the different cost categories, etc. And what is remaining for the lump sum costs is the field of requested EU contribution to be encoded, which here I haven't even put in, so it gives me a red error message. But this is basically the standard cost table, which only applies to the Waynet Europe corridor. So we save and exit from here, and we save and exit from here. What I will come back to the calculation of the amount for the lump sums in a moment. I first want to show you a couple of other things here. So concerning the structured data, to complete first, you can with view history see here the history of changes, and you can especially with print preview generate here a PDF version of the state of encoding under the structured data, which will show you then in a PDF all the information already encoded under the 4 headers that I've shown when I was in the form. Now, the system requires you to download, complete, and re-upload Part B and annexes, which are indicated here with their uploading slots. They are available on the left side in this download Part B templates, which will trigger the system to open a zip file coming here, and which gives you then the corresponding of the files to be uploaded. Now you will already notice that here we have only 4 files to be uploaded, while here there's a higher number of uploading possibilities. That is, how to say, heritage of the limited flexibility of the eGrants environment in which we are now working, where we have to configure this download facilities on a wider scale, and we unfortunately don't have the flexibility we would wish to have. You have already indicated us with your questions you've sent us that there was one file which shouldn't have been here at all on the environmental compliance. We already managed with the back office that this has been dropped from the annexes to be uploaded because it should have never been there. However, some compromises still exist. In red, you see the elements which are obligatory to upload, otherwise the system will block you from submitting a proposal. So these are the 3 mandatory documents to be uploaded, whereas in green, these are just non-mandatory documents to be uploaded. You don't have to upload anything here, and they're only there for compromises of a harmonized approach with other calls configured in the same way. And you don't have to bother in the sense that the system will not block you from submitting your proposal if you have not uploaded anything in one of the uploading slots that are here indicated in green. So the part B you need because that is a description of your proposal in more detail, in the sense of where you will copy and paste the elements of the lump sum decision as just explained by Julie in her presentation. The calculator I will show you afterwards, and timetable Gantt chart is required, while however there's no prescribed format. There is the one available in the downloads. However, if you downloads, if they still have them here, so there is a proposed template here, but you're free to use any other template with any other level of detail and granularity that you deem fit, and that is perfectly fine. So you don't have to adhere to what is made available here, as long as we have something uploaded that gives information on the progress of your proposal over time. And you have, it is your liberty to deviate and to upload anything you seem fit for that purpose. Coming then to one element, yes, which have been also questioned by you, maybe to clarify, the letters of support member state agreement is not a mandatory element. It is green, it is only voluntary for uploading, it will not block your proposal from being submitted. The reference for these questions is the call text. So in case of doubt, go back to the call text, which stipulates only to be obligatory part B, or to be mandatory to stay in the same wording, part B, the calculator or budget table, and a timetable or Gantt chart, depending on how you see fit. So this, I think, was also a question which already came frequently prior to this meeting to the help desk. Yes. Then you have here also again links to the central help desk online manual, IT how to from the colleagues managing the funders and attenders portal, anything pertaining to, what to say, the behavior of this online tool facilitating the submission, which is not governed by CINEA, as I stated. We only have the upfront work to do with the central services configuration of what will appear here as mandatory or not, what is the call text and the like. Among these is now to come to the calculator, as I've mentioned it several times. Now I should have here for you the Excel file, which is part of the elements to be downloaded. Now, the Wayland Europe corridors can stop listening for a moment because this doesn't apply to them. They are in the real cost approach with a budget table. And you will see here the instructions page with giving you a little bit of explanation. And the calculator is intended in principle for the member state applicants for under the TA grants, because here you have a work package with subtasks which all trigger a different amount potentially. So there's kind of the menu where they can choose from, and you don't have to take all of them. So if you don't implement a given work package that is offered by the lump sum decision, you simply do not encode the costs, and you encode the costs that you foresee only for the work packages or their subtasks. And then the tool, this little calculator, will give you in the end the total cost, and this maximum grant amount you take and encode as requested EU funding in the structured data budget table or budget field. It is a single one that I've shown you before. You can do this in principle also pro rata. It should, if I'm not mistaken, and then the amounts, if I encode something here, the values seem to be free, and it then jumps over, so you can then calculate the amount or take a pro rata amount from the yearly amount as in the lump sum decision, and you will get a clean number for the total to transfer. The pro rata doesn't fly for the TENTEC activities, and I've seen in the chat already there were some questions in that respect. The TENTEC activities may span over 1 year, as there is a certain, how to say, insecurity about the success of the implementation. Hence, here also we have a cell which goes across the 4 years of implementation that are foreseen. Hence, the work package 5 activities are not subject to potential pro rata cut or options that we have indicated as a possibility if there's no clean, how to say, 12 months amount to be calculated. So this is the kind of menu where the member state applicants choose their costs for. I've seen we also had a question for welfare corridors. What is flexibility? And Olivier has addressed to it. As we are going to check only the outputs and deliverables at the end of the action, we are not going to check at all what your spending profile is between the years. So this is only an instrument for calculating the total amount, and you're not going to check if you actually spend in the first year 3/4 of your budget, or if you spend all your budget in the last year. There's not going to be an ex ante control on the costs as you're used to from the standard grants. Again, this applies only for the lump sum grants and not for the Wayland Europe, as this is an actual cost grant. There also was a question on the pre-financing modalities or the payment modalities. There will be a pre-financing as for all grants, and then there will be a final payment request on the remaining amount of the grant. So it's not going to be any interim payments over the years of implementation. And now to come to a specific issue for the welfare corridors, because you will have already noticed that we only have a sheet here for the member state grants and not for the welfare corridors. Here we only have this sentence because we deemed that given there's a single work package with no sub-activities, this in principle only needs to be multiplied by the years of duration or potentially by a pro rata. Hence, we have not provided you a sheet to calculate that, as we deemed this can be done outside the system. However, we have overlooked that in the funding and tenders portal, you are still required to upload the calculator sheet as a mandatory annex. We therefore suggest you to simply upload this file blank as you have downloaded it without any change, and this will have zero impact on the evaluation of your proposal. So simply to comply with the technical requirements that you will not be able to submit your proposal without having uploaded a file under the calculator uploading slot in the funding and tenders portal. You simply re-upload this tool as is, and that is perfectly fine with us. If you want confirmation of this to give you higher assurance that this really doesn't trigger any negative repercussions on your proposal, we are happy to put this in an FAQ and publish this as an FAQ. So just to say, we had a little logical glitch, so to say, as we deemed the calculation for your proposals not to be as complicated as for the member states. Hence, we haven't foreseen the option. Still, you have to upload the file, but we hope that the pragmatic workaround to upload this file as is working for you. This in principle would be the end of what I have foreseen. I can go a little bit more in the funding and tenders portal, but if you wish, again, there has been a more detailed presentation at the General Info Day on 27 September, where a colleague more familiar with technical details and with the backgrounds has elaborated it, which is equally available, and it's the same link I've shown at the end of my presentation. I then want to pick up, there was one question from the previous session on who can be applicant for the welfare corridor proposals, infrastructure managers, EIG, or there was a question on association that was mentioned. At this stage, our understanding is that either infrastructure managers become applicants and then future beneficiaries of the grant, where the welfare corridor has not established itself as a legal entity in form of an EIG. If there is an EIG already existing, it may apply as a sole beneficiary under two conditions, which are, firstly, the EIG is solely composed of the infrastructure managers that are part of the welfare corridor in question. And B, the activities of this EIG are only pertaining to the management and implementation of the welfare corridor, which is subject of the application. These two conditions are necessary because the work program, which is our legal basis for this call, stipulates that only the infrastructure managers should be beneficiaries. And with these two conditions, we can deem an EIG as equivalent if it is composed only of the infrastructure managers and if it works only on the welfare corridor in question. By which I haven't answered the question on the association. We would need to understand what is the legal status of the association and who is part of it. So there I would maybe ask the colleague who has asked the question to get back to us to understand better the nature of this association, and it can be deemed equivalent to an EIG under the conditions I've just mentioned or not. I had also seen a question in the chat earlier that the Part B stipulates in section 6.2 that there should be at least 2 work packages. Our apologies, that is obviously an oversight from editing the application form Part B, as this was based initially on the standard Part B for the classical grants. Just disregard that statement in the Word file of the Part B requiring minimum 2 work packages. If you are in the case of a welfare corridor applicant, as you have a single work package in the lump sum decision, and obviously you're going to encode only a single work package in your Part B as it is in the lump sum decision. So that is an oversight and would have merited a bracket of if applicable, and this you can disregard. There will be no repercussions on this. I've talked a lot and I stopped talking here because I see questions incoming and I would have to start appreciating these to pick up some of them.
Daniel, thank you for this, and you have replied to several of the questions already, and in parallel, Eleni has also replied to a number of the questions that have come in. Maybe I try to reformulate something, Daniel, in order to hopefully clarify for everybody. So when we're talking about the parts, so the rail freight corridors and the member state TAs, which are subject to the lump sum approach, in that case, in principle, we just need one beneficiary, one applicant equal to one beneficiary later. So it is not for the purpose of the grant agreement that we need other parties possibly involved in delivering the work to become affiliated entities or anything like that. So my understanding is that one applicant equal to one beneficiary is sufficient, because when we're talking about the lump sums, we are paying on the basis of the deliverables, and we are not paying on the basis of the actual costs. So it also means that the deliverables, as explained by Julie in her presentation, of course needs to be comprehensive. A list of participants to the rail freight corridor meetings is relatively straightforward, but some of the other deliverables are, let's say, are reports and need to be comprehensive. So a statement saying we've done this or that is insufficient in that case. And assuming that a comprehensive deliverable has been submitted, then we as CINEA will accept that, and we will pay on the basis of that. And on the contrary, we will not be able to pay. But it also means in relation to audits, we will not be going back and looking into timesheets, as mentioned, also not looking into invoices. So an audit would take place on the basis of the deliverables and whether the deliverables have actually fulfilled the requirements as stipulated in the call. So Daniel, can you confirm that this is correct?
Yes, in principle, that is the approach. From our side, we are more, how to say, lenient, as we're not going to control who will incur the costs. Now we understand from exchanges we had in the context of the TENTEC working group that for the purpose of sharing the grant received with entities actually undertaking the work, there is a need, or depending on the national context and situation, to make certain organizations who will undertake work part of the grant agreement. This can, however, then only work with the instrument of affiliated entities, as Morten has already described. And as long as an agency dealing with, for example, the data related for the TENTEC or any other organization can demonstrate the legal or other link to qualify as an affiliated entity, we will not have problems with this to accept that. But we don't have the, how to say, from our side, there's no requirement to do so, but we understand the need from your side that you may wish to include certain organizations as affiliated entities to prepare the, how to say, flow of dispersing the grant to those who actually incur the costs on your side. Even so, we are not going to check this.
Thank you, Daniel. I also saw earlier in a question in the chat to which extent CINEA could pre-fill the information, and also if there is anybody who can review the draft application. This, of course, we cannot do neither on our side nor on the side of DG Move, as we are parties to the process. We cannot do this in the process, but I believe with the presentation from Julie showing clearly how to fill in the application as regards the work packages and the tasks and so on, I believe that this should be a clear and straightforward task now. Thank you. Yes, I saw it, and this also the last question, or the second last now, is indeed is a reply to that we cannot do that, of course.
I'm seeing a question on if several directions of a ministry would need a different pick. I would assume a ministry being a sole organization and which should have only one P code, presumably already in the system. So I would invite you to research on the funding and tenders portal your organization, and from our point of view, a ministry, even if it has several directorates, sub-branches, whatever, should be considered as one organization and then one applicant for a proposal. That was a question from Italy.
Thank you, Daniel. Let me see in case I've... So there is a question: if one of the expected deliverables is not fulfilled, then the RFC will not receive funding at all. I mean, it doesn't mean that it is all or nothing. But if a part of the if a deliverable or one task is not delivered, then there will have to be a reduction of the funding unless this is not corrected. And with regard to the question on the audit, so there will not be let's say a classical financial audit as you have been exposed to and are exposed to in relation to actual cost grant. So the an audit would be on let's say on what has been delivered, so the output of the project, which is what is triggering the payment. So as I said, there will not be an audit of timesheets, or there will not be an audit of invoices and so on in this case, because it's a lump sum. It's defined and it is the payment is done on the basis of the output of the deliverables, and that would be subject to the audit. Correct, Federica.
Morten, if I may, I see a comment concerning that there still is an environmental compliance file in Part B. Part B will have maybe a question there, but there should nowhere be an environmental compliance file for download, nor should it be required in red as obligatory. So at least from what I have currently in the funding and tenders portal, the behavior has been corrected, and I would ask the colleague Andrea Mozowski to check if you log in now into the funding and tenders portal, if it still displays you an environmental compliance file as obligatory to upload. For then we would have an issue we have to take up with the help desk. But to me, environmental compliance should be corrected and no longer be applicable.
Daniel, I also see the question on the calculator. So my understanding, the way you explained it, is that the rail freight corridors, they simply take the template of the calculator and upload it in blank format, just to fulfill the requirement of uploading a file. But it could be any other file also. Is that correct?
In principle, they could upload a blank page. I don't think the system is smart enough to well, to be tried. I don't know if the system is smart enough to recognize that the title of the file is matching the title of the file as it has been downloaded. But simply to state, we don't expect a filled or anyhow qualified calculator for the purpose of the application. We only have to bypass the system constraints that it would block submission by uploading the file as it was downloaded, and that is perfectly fine for us, and we apologize for the inconvenience caused.
Thank you. So, and then Federica has a question on the financial side. So the lump sum means that if you deliver what is required, then you receive the lump sum. We are not verifying the actual cost related to the delivery to enable allowing you to deliver to make the deliverable. So we are verifying that the deliverable fulfills the condition, and on that basis we will pay, and we will not start to look into if you had more or less cost to actually deliver this.
I had seen earlier a question from Germany to show live how to add more participants in the tool. If you want, I can quickly share my screen and do that.
I think Ellen replied.
Yeah, it was only for the case that someone mentioned that it would be not possible to add some other applicants, but I have checked in the meantime that it is possible in the system to add other participants, so it should be fine. Yeah, so no need for us to show it, only if someone else wants to see it.
Okay.
Daniel, there's a question on the from Anna Sikorska on the 0.5, Maya, where you have to confirm that you have the agreement of any additional applicant. But I don't think there is any requirement for any document for that. I mean, it is of course for the coordinator to ensure that they have the agreement, but there is no. We don't need any proof of that, and the form of that is.
Not to my aware, no. There may be a tick box in the standard elements of Part A if we would have more applicants, but there's no template to be filled, kind of signed, stamped, and scanned. So I think this is reasonably light and would only need to be demonstrated after grant agreement preparation when everybody joins the grant agreement formally.
Thanks. Then there is a question on from Viltenis. Let's say the beneficiary delivers 4 out of 5 deliverables during the 2 years period. Do I understand correctly, as per lump sum, the amount paid for those 2 years would be 0? Indeed, if the task is not completed, then we cannot pay, let's say, and let's say we can only pay if the task has been completed. Okay. I think on the last question, and maybe we will stop after this because time is also running out. So I suggest we take the last two questions, and in relation to as stated earlier, for the rail freight corridors that are running into 2021, the TA. The new TA can only start immediately after the end of the former PSA. They cannot run in parallel. This is also linked to the fact that the lump sum is calculated, and we don't have any verification of the cost. So the reply is that the new TA can only start after the end of the previous PSA. And then
I see a question here, especially on when or what happens if outputs deliverables are achieved not in a given year as planned, but in a year later. I suggest this we will discuss a little bit further internally, also the reporting rhythms and requirements, how this will be happening, because the reporting rhythm is one thing, and to say if there will be any consequences of achieving elements later or not, because as I indicated, the payment rhythm anyway is pre-financing and one final payment. So we're going to look into this a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. I think we will stop here as we are already a little bit late. Olivier, from your side, is there anything you want to say before we close?
Thank you, Morten. Thanks to the colleagues for answering this second part of the questions. As you said, of course, we will also provide some written answers. So if you still have questions that you feel have not been appropriately answered, of course, we can receive these questions and we'll try to clarify every point. So as you have understood, simplification means also that we have to reduce the number of possibilities and the number of options. This goes with a lump sum. So at first sight, it might seem a bit complicated, but I think that when we will be in the implementation phase, you will clearly see the benefit in terms of administrative simplicity. So with that, on my side, I wish you a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier, and thank you also from my side for the presentations. And I hope we have clarified many of the questions that you may have had, and we will also provide the additional information afterwards, as mentioned by Olivier. So thank you very much, and have a nice afternoon. Thank you.